Hey, that's me again. In this video, I will explain how to use Docker without actually installing it or without installing it on your workstation. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with Docker. While I do love the Docker ecosystem itself, the desktop tools on Windows not so much. Docker Desktop on Windows feels like it's weighed down with unnecessary baggage and confusing workarounds to make it play nice with WSL and Windows containers. Plus, it's always running Docker daemon in the background, which is a bit much for a purist like myself. If I'm not using Docker, it shouldn't run, right? There's simply no need for all that overhead. I mean, come on, who needs a GUI for Docker? It's like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. I prefer
What about what I want?
to keep things simple and efficient. I want to be able to run Docker commands directly from the command line without all the extra fluff.
Fluff, just facts.
I don't need the fancy GUI or a bunch of background processes running just to run a few containers. And I want to develop on a Windows workstation, not on a remote server or a virtual machine. Let's face it, no one's really making Windows or macOS containers since those operating systems aren't typically used for servers. I'm not even sure macOS containers are a thing. Let me tell you this. You don't need to install Docker on your machine if it's available somewhere nearby, like a server in the local network, a virtual machine, or WSL2 on Windows, which is the case for me. I have a WSL2 instance running on my machine. I can use it to run Docker commands without installing Docker Desktop. I want to explain how to install WSL2 as there are plenty of resources available online. But once you have WSL2 set up, you can install Docker in it. Just follow the instruction on the Docker website for installing Docker on Linux. There are a few adjustments I always make to my WSL2 Docker installation to make it work better for me. Here are the steps I take. First thing I do is enable IPv4. This is important because WSL2 uses IPv6 by default, which causes a lot of interoperability issues and is just plain inconvenient. To enable IPv4, you have to disable IPv6 in WSL2. You can do this by editing the WSL configuration file .wslconfig in your home directory. If you don't have this file, create it and add the following lines to the file. Then restart WSL by shutting it down and opening it again. The second thing I do is open up remote access to the Docker daemon. This is important because it will let me connect to the Docker daemon from my Windows workstation, from CLI or IDE like VS Code or JetBrains. There is an official guide on how to do this, but I will summarize the steps here. I've also pasted the link in the description. According to this page, you first type this command in WSL2 to edit docker.service file. Insert the following lines in the file, which will allow Docker daemon responsible for managing containers to listen on TCP port 2375. This is the default port for Docker daemon. You can change it to any other port if you want, but make sure to update the command below accordingly. Then, reload the configuration and restart the Docker daemon. You can do this by running the following commands in WSL2. It should work now, but there's also a validation step you can do to make sure Docker is listening on the port. Wow, looks like I don't have netstat installed. New WSL2 instance. I will install it now. It's part of the NetTools package. Now let's validate it again, and it's fine. Now let's enter the world of Docker contexts. Docker contexts are a way to manage multiple Docker environments from a single command line interface. This is especially useful when you have multiple Docker daemons running on different machines or in different environments. When you install Docker locally, it creates a default context called default. This context points to the local Docker daemon running on your machine. But you can create additional contexts that point to other Docker daemons, like the one running in WSL2. When you type commands in the CLI, Docker will use the context you have set to determine which Docker daemon to connect to. By default, it will use the default context, which points to the local Docker daemon. But you can change this to point to the WSL Docker daemon by creating a new context. So the thing is, command line tools for Docker come bundled with Docker installer. But they don't have to be. You can actually download CLI tools separately and use them to connect to any Docker daemon, including the one running in WSL2. The tools are actually small in size and don't require any installation. You can just download them and put it in your path. I can't see the CLI tools link advertised on a Docker website, but I know they are available for download. You can find the link in the description below. You only need docker.exe from this archive. That's it. You have Docker CLI now. Of course, running the Docker command will not work yet because we don't have a local Docker daemon running. But we can set it up to connect to the WSL2 Docker daemon instead. First, let's list Docker contexts. You can do this by running the following command in the CLI. This will show you all the available contexts and their current status. This only has the default context, which points to the local Docker daemon. We will create a new context that points to the WSL Docker daemon. Also, let's make this context the default one, so we don't have to specify it every time we run a Docker command. Now we are ready to execute a Docker command. Okay, that did work, but no containers are running. Let's run a container to test it out. I will run the hello world container, which is a simple container that prints a message to the console. This will also pull the image from Docker Hub if it's not already available locally. And there you go. The container is running and printing the message to the console. You can also see the container in the list of running containers. And that's it. You can now use Docker on your Windows workstation without installing Docker Desktop, using just a standalone, self-contained docker.exe executable. You can run any Docker command you want, just like you would with Docker Desktop. And the best part is you don't have to worry about all the extra baggage that comes with Docker Desktop. You can keep it simple and efficient, just the way I like it.